Hello everyone, this is Dr. Dave Lucas and we're now in Module 4. And as I've told you, we're using the little handbook here, the Concise Public Speaking Handbook. This particular series is the 5th edition by Stephen Beebe and Susan Beebe, and I think they're married. I met them once at a conference a few years ago. But I'm glad to have you along, and I hope that you're going to learn a lot. We're going to talk about Module 4, supporting your speech, outlining and revising your presentation, introductions and how they're valuable for a speech, the conclusion, naturally you have to close your speech, and then finally an effective, efficient way to use words. Now when you open this little book, it's very handy and it isn't filled with a lot of unnecessary material for a public speaking course. And so if you're taking a course with me somewhere at a university or college, or if you're just taking this off of YouTube, we're glad you're along and hope that you learn a lot. I've spent my entire lifetime doing public speeches and enjoy doing public speaking and jump at the chance every opportunity I get to do a public presentation. I hope that you'll get good enough to enjoy it as well. Some people are terrified. Their legs shake, they get a quiver in their eye. Remember that they don't normally see your legs shaking and they don't notice that quiver in your eye. So relax, throw yourself into this and have fun. First, we're talking about supporting your presentation. Now this is very important. There's all kinds of ways you can do this, but let me go through something that the handbook says. It's important for you to understand that you can't just get up and say something. Today on social media, it's kind of strange that people believe they can just make some sort of pronouncement and everybody will believe it. That's not really the way this works. Now, we hear a lot today about fake news. And the reason that there's talk about fake news is because you need to have at least 2, better yet 3 sources that confirm what you're asserting. Let me say that in other words. If I'm going to make a claim, I have to have something that warrants that claim, a reason for saying what I'm saying. Now, I can say something like, this particular team is the best team in the world, but that doesn't make it true. However, if I said that the college ratings had rated this team the best team in the world, then you might believe it. Then if I said that some respected person in sports said they were the best, plus the college ratings, the national ratings were out, said this team was the best, well, that's pretty strong. But then finally, if I had some third source to cite that said this team was the best, you might start to believe that. So it's important for you to understand how to upgrade and undergird your presentation. First, use an illustration, just like I did. That always helps in a presentation when you use illustrations. My good friend and professor when I was in undergraduate school, Dr. Andy Dale, used to say something like this: a story well told is never forgotten. And an illustration, if you tell it well and become very proficient at it, will stick in the minds of your listeners long after they've forgotten your name. Use descriptions, use definitions, use statistics. All of these give you powerful support. And yes, you can use opinions. If you have an opinion of someone who's well respected in a field, a handwriting expert, a PhD, a medical doctor, a forensic expert, all of those really pay off. And so it's important for you to understand that you need to support your presentation. It's not enough for you to make 3 assertions. Now you say, I know a lot about horses, or a lot about bicycles, or a lot about this, or a lot about that. That's not as important as you supporting that speech, not only with your own opinion, but with the opinion, explanations, statistics, and illustrations, and other ways that we've talked about in supporting that presentation. Well, what about the outline and revising? Now in your outline, you need to have your general purpose in mind and written out on the outline, and your specific purpose so that you know exactly what you're doing. Then in your introduction, you should have 3 or 4 of those lines written out, and especially your thesis statement, your theme statement should be in that introduction. What do I mean by that? Well, if I'm giving a speech about horses, I want to tell you in that introduction in 1 line somewhere, I'm giving a speech about horses, how you put the the hooves on them or those the shoes, how you're going to clean them off, and how you're going to board them. Any way you're going to do that, you have to have the thematic reason, the thematic topic in that introduction, so everybody knows what you're going to talk about. Introductions are important because that imitates life. Introduction, middle part of your speech, and conclusion. We have a birth, a life, and a death. It imitates life. That's why human beings like public speaking well organized this way, because it imitates life. Now, when you organize your speech, you can do this several different ways. By organizing and outlining, you can find out about what it means to have a main idea. You can combine multiple patterns. You can do chronological, which is time, birth, life, middle life, death, historically, the line. You can do topical, which is toss three ideas out like I did about the horses. You can also do spatially. Now, what that means is that if you think about giving a speech about a home or introducing some kind of let's say you're giving a tour, that's a spatial kind of organization, and it's very, very important. So organize all of your material and get it prepared so that you can do a good job in the speech. Now, I think it's critical for you to understand about these introductions and doing those outlines, because these outlines are very, very helpful for all of us. You have your central idea, as I've said, your main ideas, the supporting material, the speech's specific purpose. All these outlines contain that, your introduction, your conclusion, and signposts. Now, let's take a look at those signposts, because people get confused about that, and I want to spend a moment about this idea of signposts, because nobody seems to be able to get that. Now, a signpost talks about something important in your presentation. It gives a signal to the listener that you're making a really good, important point. And a signpost provides the people, the listeners, where you've driven a stake in the ground and shown them that this particular item or this topic that you're talking about is very, very important. Now, in your introduction, you're going to explain the reason for the speech. You want an attention getter. And if I find out anything that people forget in presentations and public speaking, especially brand new speakers, they forget to try to get my attention. You must get the attention of the audience. For example, let's say you're going to give a speech about snakes. Now, I know most of you may not like snakes. I don't either. But if I were going to give a speech about snakes, I might have an introduction something like this. Of all the places in the world, there is one place that has the most poisonous snakes of any location on earth. It appears that they were all dumped in one location, and that was on the continent of Australia. Now, you see, that's kind of an attention getter. To talk about snakes and poisonous snakes, you talk about something that's unique, strange, a little different, that's getting the attention. And that's what that introduction is supposed to do. The introduction is supposed to tell them what you're going to say, get their attention, and drive them into the middle of the speech. It also establishes your credibility. If I had walked in here off the street and had unkempt hair and looked like I'd been in a fight and maybe was bleeding a little bit off to the side and my clothes were disheveled and I didn't speak well, you might think, well, what have I signed up for? How did I get in this kind of program? But I put on a tie for you and I put on a clean shirt so that you would say, well, this guy at least acts like he knows what he's doing. That's what I wanted, some credibility. The introduction is where you gain that. So you have to take a look there at the material that you've got and try to think about it. Google introductions for speeches, get a good idea. Here's a quick notice on effective introduction techniques. Use an illustration, present a startling fact or statistic like we did about the snakes, use an appropriate quotation, always a winner in an introduction. Use humor, but be careful. As a novice speaker, you'll want to wait till you get good at the timing of a speech, then you can do some humor. Begin with a rhetorical question, but watch out, sometimes they'll answer it. Refer to historical events to kind of set the tone for what you're talking about. Use some personal reference or story, or refer to the occasion, make sure everybody knows you know why you're there. Now, this conclusion is also just as important. Look, you're going to open your speech, you're going to do the middle, and you're going to close. You're going to tell them what you're going to say, you're going to say it, and then you're going to tell them what you said. Now, that sounds simplistic and repetitive, but in public speaking, we repeat some. A little bit, we go back over something to make sure people have gotten it. The purposes of conclusions is to draw everything to close. Now, it depends on what kind of speech you're giving. If you're just introducing yourself to the public or to people, the conclusion is some way to kind of softly walk off and give everybody a warm feeling. In an informative speech, the conclusion is to say, here's what I've told you, here's why it's important, I hope you learned something. In a persuasive speech, it's to bring them down to some sort of action. Either believe, change their mind, sign up, buy what you're selling. And then in a demonstration speech, for example, it says, here's why I demonstrated this and why it's important. So it's a summary. It's a closing. It's a way for you to provide some closure to people that are listening. Funerals are conclusions. Now, finally, we want to talk about using words effective and efficiently. Now, this isn't all you need. You need to read your booklet. You need to go over this material. You need to think about what I've said. But it's very, very important for you to understand that to use words effectively is critical to what we're saying. Now, I want to talk to you first about passive and active verbs. The word is, are, was, were, seems, am, all of those words are passive. He is a doctor. It's not very strong. He practices as a doctor. He practices as an attorney. You take that verb and use an action verb, and it gives it so much more strength. And so when you're talking about using words well, you want to use words efficiently and powerfully and make your speech flow with good words. Poetry is never wrong to use, except you don't want to use too much of it because it wears people out. You want to make sure that you're efficient in your word. There's one place here in this book that I think is really good. Instead of saying this, so for that reason, due to the fact, or but at the time, or in the final analysis, say so, because, but, or finally. Efficient use of words. In public speaking, you don't want to be flowery. You don't want to be all pomp and circumstance. Cut to the chase, get to the point, make it happen. Now, there is something to be said for a rhythm, some repetition, cadence, and parallelism. All of this works well. And you want to make sure that as you use words, you know what they mean and you say them correctly. I've made the mistake. I remember as a younger person, I used to say that's a mute point. I didn't hear what other people were saying, and for some reason I didn't learn the correct word, and I used the word, that's a mute point, and that's not the way you say that. It's a moot point. Mute is where something gets quiet, M-U-T-E. Moot means blunted or useless. Well, anyway, be careful. Think over. I recommend that you do your speech in front of other people, make sure, practice, of course, and make sure that you work over the words that you're using so that everybody is understanding what you're saying. So we've talked about support, we've talked about organization, outlining, introduction, conclusion, we've talked about efficient word use. We're not solely using this little public speak handbook, but I think it's a good one. But in your public speaking, the most important aspect is for you to get up, throw yourself into it, and do the best that you can do. I want to thank you for watching Module 4. I hope that you've learned something, and I hope that you'll continue to work hard at giving a good public speech. My name is Dr. Dave Lucas. This has been Module 4, and let's carry on and do the right speech at the right time. Thank you.